Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome to this webinar on the EU Recovery Fund. There is a big discussion sometime, at least, on the slow and arcane decision-making process in the EU. And goodness, sometimes things can take time. Apparently, it took a decade to agree upon a common passport for pets. And as a dog owner, that's obviously a huge problem. But seen from that perspective, one will have to say that what we have witnessed the last year is nothing less but a turbocharged decision-making process, because it took exactly 1 year from the Commission's proposal on the Recovery Fund till it was then decided and also ratified by all 27 member states. For the last months, member states have been busy basically preparing their national recovery plans, which are a precondition to obtain support from the record high recovery fund. And it is exactly that national plan that the Commission President will discuss with Denmark when she arrives tomorrow on her whirlwind tour through Europe. Today she is apparently in Lisbon and in Madrid, and after she's been to Copenhagen, she goes to Athens. So what better time than this to take a deep dive into the Danish recovery plan? How does Denmark intend to spend the money that has been set aside for Denmark? And moreover, we also want to have sort of a sneak preview, one could say, of the other plans, so EU 27 in total. Do we see sort of a clear picture there that money is actually being spent on the areas that were agreed upon? So digitalization and climate change, that's going to be a core question that we'll look into. The latter is obviously important from a purely legalistic point of view, that one sticks to the rules that were agreed upon. But there's already now a discussion taking place about, slowly starting at least, whether this recovery fund could become permanent. And there's obviously also important that money is spent the right way, because if we have huge articles about sort of mismanagement and money going sort of in the wrong pockets, then this will also sort of influence that debate, and then one could forget about having any kind of discussion about whether this fund should be permanent or not. Ursula von der Leyen came forward with a rather clear signal: stick to the rules, and I quote, "We have to make sure that the plans are in line with European priorities. We know that on paper that they are. Now we have to make sure that the implementation of these ambitious goals take place, and we will be very vigilant to make sure that this implementation is rigorous," quote unquote. So let's get started. Let's get this webinar off the ground. We have 3 interventions, and remember, you can use the sort of chat functions for questions and comments. Our first speaker is Asbjørn Brink, Head of EU Budget and Climate and International Climate, Agriculture and Environment Unit in the Danish Ministry of Finance, a very long sort of affiliation. But I guess you know what Asbjørn will speak on. He will obviously talk about the Danish recovery plan. After that, we move on to my colleague, Jan Høgh-Schmidt, Senior Advisor at Tænketanken EUROPA and former Director in the European Commission. And Jan Høgh will basically sort of take a look at EU 27. What do you know?
Sender det der fra USA og lige holder os i loopet.
There's somebody speaking on the line, so I'm trying to... That can go away, if you could just please mute yourself. And then finally, we will go to the Portuguese Deputy Head of Mission here in Copenhagen, Mrs. Gracia Costa Macedo, to give us some insights on the final hours of the Portuguese presidency, obviously only sort of connected to what we're talking about today, the EU's Recovery Fund. So without further ado, Asbjørn Brink, the floor is yours. What's in the Danish plan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lykke, and thank you very much for hosting this event. I will try to see if I can figure out how to show a little PowerPoint presentation.
Seems to be okay.
Virker det tavs? Hold on. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much, Luke, and thank you very much for hosting this event and for inviting me to give a brief presentation of the Danish plan. I can indeed confirm that we have been extremely busy in the last few months in drafting the Danish recovery plan in good collaboration with the Commission. I'm here today just to give you a brief introduction to what is the content of the Danish plan. It will obviously be a bit quick and not dive into so much details, but I'm very happy to take questions, and I also brought a lot of extra slides in case there are more questions to dig into. So a quick recap of what the Recovery and Resilience Facility is. Last summer, the EU heads of state and government adopted this historically large recovery package of 750 billion euros as a response to the COVID-19 crisis. This comes on top of the EU's multi-annual financial framework, which is about 1,100 billion euros. So it was indeed some very expensive 4 or 5 days without sleep for some of us, where it was agreed to spend about 1,800 billion euros. A large part of this is the Recovery and Resilience Facility. It's what we're here today to mainly discuss. This provides the possibility of grants of approximately 312 billion euros divided among member states, and then the possibility of loans for about 360 billion euros. The package is financed by common debt. I think the Commission already started to issue the first bonds yesterday, and this debt financing the next generation EU is to be paid back at the latest by 2058. To contribute to paying back this, the Commission will come up with some proposals for new sources of revenue. That's perhaps also something we can discuss later on today. So as you can see from the figure on the right, I'm sure that Jan will also get into that. Some member states obviously receive quite a lot more funds than others. This is of course because the distribution of the RRF funds is done in such a way that it's designed to help those countries that was hit the hardest by COVID-19. So and also actually only for now it's only 70% of the allocation that we are certain of. The rest of the last 30% of the allocation is based on the development here in 2020 and 2021. So these are based on estimates, the distribution among the member states. Now, in Denmark, how we approached it was to first of all try to build the selection of initiatives in the Danish recovery plan on the input from civil society, businesses and industry. This is especially from the restart teams that comprises of different business lines, and the government's 13 climate partnerships, which came up with proposals on how to restart the Danish economy and focus on the green transition. The idea has been then to combine national funds with EU funds to stimulate economic activity and ensure a swift recovery. So approximately half EU funds and half in national funds. The COVID-19 crisis, of course, meant that we needed to increase public spending quite massively, and the idea behind the Danish plan has then been to use this window of opportunity to also accelerate the transition to a green economy, which is also the title of the Danish recovery plan, namely accelerating the green transition. So the Danish ambitions of the parliament and of the government of reducing greenhouse gas emissions has served as the cornerstone when designing the reforms and the investments in the Danish plan, making up just around so that climate expenditures makes up around 60% of the total expenditures in the Danish recovery plan. The rest of the funds in the recovery plan is mainly focused on strengthening the health sector and harnessing the potentials from further digitalization. Digital expenditures make up around 25% of the funds. So the green focus in the Danish plan is also evident when looking at the plans submitted. Here is an overview of the plans that has been submitted so far, where you can see that I think, as I remember it, only Luxembourg has a plan where the share of green expenditures is a little bit higher, 1 percentage point higher than in the Danish plan. Categorizing expenditures in all the recovery plans follow rather strict EU rules that stems from the taxonomy regulation, so it should actually be comparable across member states how expenditures are categorized. Just a little brief here also when looking more broadly beyond the EU and compare overall recovery responses to different countries around the world. Also here you can see that the Danish response to the crisis is very green. The figure here on the right is made by the UN, where it shows how the fiscal response to the COVID-19 economic crisis has been combined with more green investments to accelerate the green transition. So this is an overview here where I've tried to summarize the key aspects of the Danish plan. The spending share of each component of the plan is also shown at the table to the right. And I think the primary takeaway is that the plan tries to achieve two main goals at the same time. One is to protect workers and the economy from the impact of COVID-19 to the largest extent possible, and to use this window of opportunity to direct funding towards the necessary investments in the green transition. With this recovery plan and previous political decisions, then approximately 1/3 of the gap towards closing the 70% reduction target is reached, and also in this plan it involves quite significant investment in some of the most promising technologies, making up which will enable us to hopefully in the future have new tools in the toolbox to actually reach the target of 70% reduction. At the same time, the Commission and we estimate that the effect of the Danish plan combined with the general EU effect of Next Generation EU will create an estimated 8,000 new jobs in Denmark and increase GDP by approximately 0.4 to 0.7% of GDP, depending on how the funds will be spent across the EU. So a little bit deeper into some of the green elements of the Danish plan. A key element is, of course, the green tax reform, which with an ambition of implementing an economy-wide uniform carbon tax. This is, of course, a little bit of a complex task, and therefore it's also necessary to try to help companies to quickly adjust to this upcoming increased carbon taxation. Therefore, the Danish recovery plan literally opens a window of opportunity by offering short-term tax deductions for green and digital investments. So basically trying to give the companies an incentive to adapt their production capability to more green production capabilities before the new carbon tax kicks in. We've also used financing from the recovery fund for several other green initiatives. This is, for example, the reform of road transport with an ambition of 1 million green cars on the roads by 2030. And funds have been also allocated to reducing emissions in heating through energy renovations, replacing of oil burners and gas furnaces and stuff like that. Also in the agricultural field by removing these less productive high carbon soils from production, which emits quite a lot of carbon. As I mentioned earlier on, to achieve to reach the goal of 70% reduction, we don't have enough known tools in the toolbox right now, and therefore investments are also being done in some of the most promising green technologies, and tax deductions are provided for private companies to incentivize them to also set aside funds for green research and development. So this approach on focusing on the green transition has been the cornerstone of selecting the initiatives in the Danish recovery plan, getting the maximum measurable climate effect for each euro spent. So as you can probably see there, by now we think that the Danish recovery plan over-delivers on especially the green aspect, which has been the focus point for selecting the initiatives in the Danish plans. By now, I think most member states have already submitted their plan, and the Commission then has 2 months to assess the plan. We expect that Ursula von der Leyen, when she comes to Copenhagen tomorrow to meet with the Prime Minister, will come with a positive assessment of the Danish recovery plan, and then hopefully approval of the Danish recovery plan by the Ministers for Finance here mid-July. After the Commission's assessment of the Danish plan, it will be discussed intensively by Ministers of Finance and undergo scrutiny there as well, before hopefully money will start flowing into companies and citizens by this summer. That was a very quick introduction to the Danish plan. After Jan and our Portuguese colleague, I'm of course ready to answer any questions. Thank you very much, Luke.
Thank you very much, Asbjørn. And also thank you for sort of clarifying where the money comes from, so to speak. I mean, I think that's also an important sort of point, and obviously also an important sort of issue that we should all sort of look into also for the future, but also now with the own resources coming up, that discussion is also going to be vital. But let's move on, because these were basically, to use a metaphor from the Eurovision Song Contest, these were the votes from Copenhagen, from Denmark. Now we move on to Europe as such. So Jan Høst, that's your task. What do we know about the plans of EU 27 in total? The floor is yours. Oops, I think you have to unmute. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Luke. I'm delighted to take part in this, and I'll be very brief. Asbjørn was already giving indications also of the general picture. Now. As he indicated, indeed, the Commission has already tapped the market to borrow money from the fund for the fund, and I think about 20 billion euro were raised yesterday at a favorable interest rate. So far, so good. Now, preconditions to start payments from the fund are that member states deliver these national recovery plans to the Commission, that the Commission approves the plans, and that the Council accepts them. And in this process, the EP also has the opportunity to express its opinion. This process should take place May, June, and July. I think no doubt it may very well take a bit longer. We still lack 4 plans from Bulgaria, Estonia, Netherlands and Malta, and if I'm not mistaken, Romania might ask for a delay until September to improve its plan after talks with the Commission. Those 23 plans which have been delivered include spending, mostly investments of a total of 495.6 billion euros. Only 7 member states have included loans from the EU in their plans so far. Spain might follow. If the plans are approved by the Commission and accepted by the Council, the Commission could then already for some, I mean now, and during autumn, pay out 13% upfront of the money to the member states, corresponding to approximately 64 billion euros. The rest of the money will then be paid according to verification of milestones for implementation of the plan. Both the Commission, IMF, ECB, and also independent economists have given sort of estimates on positive impact on the recovery fund money. In its spring 2021 forecast, the Commission estimated that member states' plan would include investments of 140 billion euro for the forecast period 2021 and 22, and this in itself amounts to 1% of 2019 EU GDP. So the Commission estimates the impact of the plans to be an extra growth for the EU of 1.2% over 2021 to 22. An earlier IMF estimate indicated a boost by 2023 at 3/4 of a percentage point. Looking at the 23 of the plans, I mean, we have, like Asbjørn and his colleagues, also let's say a favorable sort of conclusion so far of the distribution of the funds between the main areas. Simon, can you put on the slides we have on the distribution, please? But according to our estimates, approximately 68% of total spending in the plans will be for the green and the digital transformation. For 21 of the plans, these two areas receive over 60% of the national planned resources. For 20 of the analyzed plans, green transformation is the main priority. For Germany, the main priority in its plan is digital transformation. Now, of course, there has also been some criticism. Some NGOs and the Green Group in the European Parliament criticize a number of the national plans for lack of conformity with the agreed rules on how to categorize especially green investments. And according to this open letter, which has been sent to the Commission, the plans may not sufficiently contribute to the necessary reduction in the CO2 emissions in 2030 and 2050. I know the Commission should have responded. I have not been able to see the response from the Commission, but the Commission seems to be pretty confident that at least for the plans it has agreed to so far, the distribution is okay, and the plans to a large extent, also other plans, conform with the agreed criteria. But we have to see that when the Commission's assessment comes out on that. For the digital transformation, there is also a coming report from Deloitte, the consultancy firm, which apparently, according to the web media, EUROPA will point out that the plans only partially contribute to reach the targets for investments in connectivity and IT skills, which are included in the Commission's 2030 Digital Compact for digital transformation. Finally, and that's to me at least, I mean, a rather serious or could be potentially a serious problem. There are increasing reports quoted in, for example, Financial Times, but also now today I saw in Danish newspapers, which point to bottlenecks and flaws in supply chains for the construction sector. And this may lead to price increases and delays for many of the construction projects in the various national plans. It may also boost general inflation in the EU. So, all in all, there are still a number of major outstanding problems ahead to secure an effective spending of the historical amount of EU money in the fund. And speaking of that historical amount of money, I mean, some people already want the fund to be a permanent fiscal mechanism for the EU, and discussions are slowly starting on that. But if it turns out that there are major problems in the effective implementation of the recovery money, surely resistance vis-à-vis such a fiscal mechanism will likely be massive. Thank you, Lykke, for now.
Thank you very much. And one will also have to say with regard sort of to the support for the fund, that there's also an item that we haven't mentioned, the overall sort of rule of law mechanism, which was agreed upon at the European Council last year. That was part of the compromise. So countries that do not live up to the EU sort of overall values, also rule of law, where they can actually then sort of be in a position where they will not get the money they were basically sort of told they would get according to the figures that we saw. And that's obviously also a huge discussion taking place at the moment also between the Commission and the European Parliament. I just want to show one slide with regards to public support to the EU as such, because I think it's an important sort of point also to raise here that this is a flagship project for the European Union, obviously in terms of economic growth and hence also with regards to public support for the EU. It is, as we know, a French idea. It was Emmanuel Macron, obviously together with other countries, but very much sort of idea thought in the Élysée Palace and not something that Germany thought at the beginning was a very good idea. I guess we can also mention that Denmark was not so really cheering when this project was launched. So I think it is striking to look upon this opinion poll that we've conducted, Think Tank EUROPA, together with European Council Foreign Relations, to look upon France. Because if you look upon France here in this slide that I'm showing you, you can see that France is actually the only country where, well, the category that one picks, if one is asked sort of, do you think that membership is a good or a bad thing for your country? Well, most people actually say they don't know. So I think that is striking for the overall debate about also the recovery fund, and that's why it's important, obviously, also from a French perspective, that this recovery fund turns into a success. But now we move on to Portugal. So the Portuguese presidency, the floor is yours, Ms. Matildo.
Can you hear me now? Thank you,
Yes,
Lucy.
we can.
Thank you so much. I will start my intervention by mentioning that many of you also mentioned that the COVID outbreak in last year had such a huge impact in the economic, social, and budgetary outlook in the European Union and worldwide, of course. And it called for an urgent and coordinated response. And as you mentioned, the European response, all things considered, can be today evaluated as quite speedy for European tradition. And in fact, it was possible to reach an historical agreement in July last year at the extraordinary meeting of the European Council that allowed for an exceptional response to what is also an unprecedented crisis. And this response is what is known as the European Union Recovery Instrument, the Next Generation EU, and its central piece, that is the Recovery and Resilience Facility, that focus on measures aimed at restoring labor markets, social protection, healthcare systems, as well as strengthening of potential for sustainable growth and employment in order to reinforce cohesion and convergence among member states. So in a way, it was not only a response to the COVID situation also, but it was in a way seen as an opportunity also to boost a change and a recovery of European economies and member states and European economy as such. So the implementation of these European instruments that is done at the national level through the national recovery and resilience plans, together with the multi-annual financial framework, has been a priority of the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union. Asbjørn also mentioned that together these two instruments represent an ambitious and comprehensive financial package of 1.8 trillion euros that can set the Union on the path of sustainable and resilient recovery, creating jobs and repairing the immediate damage caused by the pandemic while supporting its green and digital transitions. With the conclusion of the ratification process of the own resources decision, that was fundamental, that entered into force on the 1st of June, and that which exceptionally allowed the European Commission to get financing on the capital markets. And most of the national plans already presented. The presidency keeps aiming at the full submission and approval of the remaining national plans so that the funds can quickly reach the economies of the member states. Jan mentioned that there are starting some discussions about this becoming a more permanent instrument, but as such it was designed as an exceptional and unique response. So if the discussions will happen, how they will progress, that is to be seen, but for now, this is the scenario we have. The President, you mentioned also, President of the European Commission is now traveling this week to several countries to highlight precisely the launching of the national plans, and of course with its approval of the first group, then the starting of the full implementation of these instruments. We as Presidency expect that this first group of national plans can be approved by ECOFIN by the end of June, allowing the Commission to move forward with the signing of the respective grant and loan agreements with the Member States, and with the consequent payment of the pre-financing of 13% of total grants and loans under the RRF. So we hope that this money could start flowing in the economies of the first member states by August. Let's hope it will be like this. So, moreover, regarding the multi-annual financial framework, the Portuguese presidency has promoted the conclusion of the negotiation and the technical finalization of most of the regulations, ensuring that various EU policies can start to be implemented. Due to its relevance for the implementation of the action plan targets, it was worth mentioning the conclusion of the negotiations with the European Parliament on the cohesion policy regulations and the finalization of the procedures. In order to maximize the use of the cohesion policy funds and the recovery and resilience facility, it is essential to take advantage of the complementarities and synergies between these two instruments. And as some of you mentioned already, the distribution of the funds were aimed at addressing the different impacts of the pandemic crisis in the national economies. So it is important that the pre-existing instruments can also be utilized in a complementary way with these new instruments in order to maximize its potential and its effects. So to conclude, as Presidency of the Council of the European Union, almost at a final stage, we hope that the implementation of these unique and exceptional tools, jointly with the traditional European instruments and policies, will transform the current unprecedented challenges into an invaluable opportunity for the development of the European economies and societies. So let's see how it goes. We will pass on to the next presidency this good task of keep implementing them and hope for the best in the next months and years as regards to development of these instruments. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And also congratulations on the football match last night and on Ronaldo's new record.
Thank you.
Let's move to some of the questions. Jens Hauge Lehmann has a question for Asbjørn. Not sure whether you could see can you see the question yourself, Asbjørn? Okay, so you already so maybe you just sort of answer it or just refer to the question when you answer it. But I also have sort of a number of other questions. Could you also elaborate a bit more on the job figure you mentioned? I mean, as far as I understood, that was connected to the Danish part of the plan, so that this was not the figure for the total recovery fund for Denmark. Do you have that figure, or just, enlighten us on that? And finally, also with regards to basically what happens now from a Danish perspective, I presume that you are following sort of also what's in the other plans, but I guess that's also going to be part of the preparation for the ECOFIN meeting. And as we all know, Denmark was very tough together with the Frugal Four, that one should really, really stick to the rules. So is that something that the Frugal Four coalition is also working on now, or is that a task that is basically left to the European Commission? Over to you, Asbjørn.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lykke. And just to reply to Jens's question, indeed, Jens, this was not something I mentioned in my presentation, but the procedure for the distribution of the plans of the funds in Denmark is decentral. So, for example, it's all the relevant line ministries that will distribute the funds. For example, there will be a fund for replacing oil burners and gas furnaces. This is administered by the Ministry for Climate. You have also a fund for new electric ferries and retrofitting ferries to make them more green. That is administered by the Ministry for Transportation. So it will be a decentralized distribution of the funds depending on the relevant areas in the Danish recovery plan. For the job figure, Lykke, perhaps I was not very clear on that. I also tried to speak very fast. Not as fast as you. I still have something to learn there. But the figure I mentioned of approximately 8,000, that is a combination of the Danish plan and the effect of all the other recovery plans. So actually the isolated effect of the Danish plan on employment and on GDP growth is much smaller. What really drives this is actually the total stimulus of the European recovery plans. So the single market here. What happens now? Yeah. So now I hope that von der Leyen will come with a positive assessment of the Danish plan tomorrow. Otherwise, I will be very, very unpopular with the Danish Minister for Finance. After that, then those plans that has received a positive assessment by the Commission, they will then be thoroughly discussed in the Council. Questions they will be scrutinized also by the Council, and as Jan mentioned, actually also European Parliament. Then we will aim at, I think the Portuguese presidency is aiming at a final discussion on some of the first batches of the plans in ECOFIN on the 13th of July. Where I think that the first batch of plans is going to be approved. I hope also that includes the Danish plan. So you asked how will be the Danish approach here. I think the Danish government is still in talks with the parliament and the parties in there on how to precisely define the Danish approach, but I don't expect that it will change much. As you mentioned from previously, I think the government will see it as tremendously important to follow up on the actual spending of these plans to make sure that you get bang for the buck. It's also my impression that the Commission has taken a lot of very tough discussions with each member state, also with us, challenging every proposed measure, every reform, making sure that you have that the EU has very concrete follow-up steps. So the payment of all the payment installments for the Danish recovery plan, for example, is contingent on us fulfilling a number of targets and milestones. For example, how many oil burners and gas furnaces do we expect to replace by Q1 2022, Q2 2022, and they are followed by actual replacing these oil burners and gas furnaces. So it's performance based in that way. But I think many of these rather difficult discussions, the Commission has already taken that with member states.
Great, and we hope that your minister will be happy with you tomorrow. But I knowing a bit about politics, I presume that you have received the thumbs up from the Commission, also from Ursula von der Leyen. There was a specific question here concerning. Oops, now I can't really see now. I have other sort of questions coming in here about the gas furnaces, basically, that Ole Theisen says, I did not see any measures to improve the overall building quality related to ESG measures beyond the removal of gas furnaces. And we have Jens Bundvad, would like to have a few more comments on the proposal to make the plan a permanent European economic policy stabilizing instrument. I think that one goes to Jan, and we have a few minutes left. So can you say anything, Asbjørn, about the very specific question from Ole on gas furnaces?
Yep, the way I read Ole's question, it's more on overall building quality. There we actually also, the Danish recovery plan also contains 2 specific funds on energy renovation, both in public buildings and in private buildings. So support for making buildings more energy efficient, besides the replacing of oil furnaces and gas burners.
Okay. And before I give the floor to Jan, can you reveal anything about where Ursula von der Leyen, where will she actually go in Copenhagen, or is that a secret? Will she visit whatever DT University, or is that a secret? Do we know?
I think that the Prime Minister's office will send out a press statement very shortly, revealing where she will be.
Well, we have to wait. I think we can control ourselves. Jan, the floor is yours. Basically, the question about from Jens Bundmed about sort of the prospects of a more permanent fund with regards to a stabilizing instrument for the future of the EU. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lykke. The prospects are unclear. Let me be clear so far on that. This is an old discussion. Ever since the common currency, the euro, was created, and it returns now with the crisis. And we have basically, some of the southern countries versus usually Germany and the Frugal Fours, and probably also others who don't want to have such a fiscal mechanism. There is not any clarity either on whether such a fiscal mechanism should be in the form of the fund, or whether one should maybe go for something which is more like a financial stabilization mechanism than the fund would be. So that's unclear. We will not know much before we have had an election in Germany that you can maybe speak a little bit more about. And we probably also have to await an election next year in March or in spring in France. So this is unclear. My point is simply, in order to, let's say, have a positive impact on that old discussion, the spending from the recovery fund has to be a success. That is at least how I can see that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Always something to look forward to. 2 elections coming up, but there's also another event that you can look forward to, because if you want to continue this overall discussion about the recovery fund, the EU sort of overall sort of crisis management approach in the COVID crisis, we have another event coming up on the 24th of June, organized together with the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, basically looking into sort of the overall question, how has the EU been able to tackle COVID within the last 450 days? And there the recovery fund will also be part of our overall discussion. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeppe Kofod, will be one of the speakers. So will Ulrik Vestergaard from the OECD, just to mention 2. And for those who want to study and read up on the Danish plan, we have put the link in the chat, so you can find it there. So thank you very much for your time, particularly to Asbjørn, and obviously also to the Portuguese presidency and to my colleague Jan. See you all soon. Stay safe, and let's hope for the best also for the football match tomorrow. I couldn't resist that remark, but I guess you guessed that. Take care. Bye-bye.